Okay, we've got a few things we got to do. I think I will begin with where we left off. We do have to watch this. So I'll wait until Darmadam gets here. We'll watch the knowledge of arising and passing away. Okay, in the meantime, I got to figure out where we ended off. We got to about this point. Okay, I say, so this is, I guess, in response to a lot of stuff. Now, to be clear, I might also argue that even though we don't want to succumb to neural essentialism, yo, just came back from mindfuling. Did it feel mindful? Was it mindful enough? Happy Friday, Onion Helmet. Another Friday. Another dollar. All right, there is much to learn, gain from teachings. Okay, so I wanted to say, even though we don't want to succumb to neural essentialism, there is still much to learn / gain from teachings in the sense that these cultures develop sophisticated and self-evidently efficacious conceptualizations, in some sense notings, that we can use or internalize for the expediency of our own practice. And I know that sounds terrible, but while we don't have to indulge these as ontological truths, we can commit to them as highly effective ways to categorize and conceptualize experience. Of course, there is the question of whether or not we can now create even more effective, perhaps more accessible conceptualizations, heavily influenced by these, leveraging what we now know about the underlying neurodynamics. Okay, so you are describing exactly what William James called pragmatic truth. The value of a concept lies entirely in its cash value for the human experience. Now, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go as far as that, but certainly we can consider the value a concept can have, or how we can make more from it. Did you see the video with Mike Thurston and Dr. K 2 months ago? I did not. Was it excellent? Was it nice? Ancient contemplative traditions essentially operated as black box behavioral laboratories for thousands of years. They may have lacked fMRI machines, but through massive trial and error, they developed highly optimized algorithms for manipulating the human nervous system. Stripping the ontological dogma from these traditions while retaining the operational code is exactly how we get functional frameworks. Your next question, whether we can engineer even more effective, accessible conceptualizations based on modern neurodynamics, is the current frontier of contemplative science. Okay, here is how modern researchers are translating ancient software into neurodynamics frameworks. So when you translate ancient Pali or Sanskrit terms into cognitive or neurodynamic concepts, you often strip away the moral and cultural baggage that can actually hinder an analytical mind. Dr. Judson Brewer, a neuroscience and psychiatrist, took the Buddhist concept of tanha, so craving or clinging, the root of suffering, and translated it directly into operant conditioning and the neurobiology of the default mode network. Interesting. It's just 2 hours of unadulterated Dr. K talking about how to build a life you don't need to escape from. Oh, that's really cool then. That we should pin that for part 3. Part 3 notes. Do you know where the link is? Should I just search for that? Is it going to be as easy as this? It is.
I work with people.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Why are these different?
Philly.
Why would the share codes be different? Are they temporary? All right. So, okay, the traditional concept is you must let go of attachments to achieve peace. This is often creates a paradox where a practitioner aggressively craves letting go, leading to frustration. Brewer frames craving simply as a contraction of the posterior cingulate cortex driven by a habit loop. So I think this is just really getting down to like our dopamine urges, but I could be wrong about that. Yo, what's good, Dharmadam? Happy Friday. The YouTube share codes are different for some reason. Parts of it might be of interest. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in line with our mission. Thank you for hoping our wellness. Sure, yeah. I think we should be more lax. I did want to get through this. We shouldn't be too far from the bottom, but so instead of viewing a distraction as a spiritual failure, blah blah blah, have it outdated. Okay. From Vipassana, okay. Shinzen Young, a meditation teacher with a deep interest in mathematics, developed unified mindfulness. He completely dismantled traditional Buddhist noting and replaced it with a highly accessible secular algorithm. So noting complex states like aversion, sloth, or restlessness, and now Young reduces all human experience to a matrix of 3 sensory elements: see, hear, and feel, which are further divided into internal and external. Okay. So that's always the thing. From equanimity to precision weighting. Right, the predictive processing. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, what happened after this? What did I say? Okay, now can you take a look at our whole conversation at a meta level? Is this actually the direction that I should be going in, given all that we know today? Certainly there are many people who would take this route as inappropriate or blasphemous in some sense. Okay. You're correct that many traditional practitioners view this exact trajectory as inappropriate. In the contemplative community, the secularization is often pejoratively called McMindfulness or reductionism. Traditionalists argue that by stripping away the metaphysical ontology and the strict moral frameworks, you are taking a profound spiritual vehicle designed for ultimate liberation and degrading it into a mere productivity hack or psychological stress relief tool. They argue that reducing concepts like emptiness to flatten to some type of predictive processing notion misses the ineffable transcendent nature of the experience. All right, so I wouldn't want to try to keep like a transcendent nature of the experience, but I think that we should be careful about not getting rid of the more holistic culture behind these practices, and especially for the sake of part 3, like we really might want to dive into how we can leverage these types of framings for part 3. Like one thing we might want to do in part 3 is to like consider what are effective ways in which you can think about your own life that makes the life feel more engaging or rewarding or whatever. And that I think we should consider these cultures. Okay, why the traditional critique fails for your use case. But your stated goal is cognitive. You want better focus, mindful awareness, and the ability to not get swept up by salience. So this is, it's going based on like what I'm trying to get out of my practice, but that's not what I'm trying to get out of, obviously, this month, and also just in general my interest in these cultures. For a mind that prioritizes blah 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 blah, if you're sitting on a cushion, but your intellect is constantly generating friction because it refuses. Okay, blah blah blah. You're out to okay. The contemporary consensus supports this direction. Meditation is increasingly understood not as a religion, but as a behavioral technology, blah, 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 blah. You don't need to adopt ancient Buddhist metaphysics to understand how top-down attentional control alters the default mode network. The mechanism functions regardless of the mythos surrounding it. Okay. And then did I say that my retreat is set for March 20th or March 21st? I don't think I could do 21st anymore, unfortunately. So I think I'm gonna have to change it. Someone invited me to something. The absolute gall of them. So this needs to be a like completely free day. Also, I wouldn't want to like do it up until the event, and then now I've gone from a full day of meditation to a party or something like that. Okay, let's be more clear about the extent and limitations, exclamation point, of these practices and our expectations. Certainly, empirical evidence tells us about some obvious outcomes: emotion regulation, lowering dopamine tolerance, building positive mental well-being, etc. Then there are probably effects that we can speculate that haven't been necessarily tested for, but we can surmise them from noticing brain activity of yogis. Can you comprehensive account for the outcomes one would expect? Okay, so this is, I don't even think I looked into this, but this was the answer to Birdbane's question yesterday. I didn't even remember typing this one out a few days ago. All right. We have to divide the timeline of neuroplasticity. The fundamental distinction in contemplative neuroscience is between states and traits. So temporary alterations in brain activity during practice and permanent structural changes to the brain's baseline wiring. Pop mindfulness routinely conflates the two, leading to wildly inflated expectations. Here is a rigorous, empirically grounded accounting of what meditation actually does, what we can extrapolate from advanced practitioners, and crucially, its hard limitations. So this is actually kind of a topic that we had set for a later date, but I guess we'll do it now. Let's before we jump into this, let's watch this video. We got to chill out, and then we also have to watch the other video. We have to watch the Beth video from yesterday.
When I say mind is like the sky, it's not the thinking mind. The thinking mind is like a busy street, and it's not like the sky. If you take that mind and then you turn it to look at itself, if it looks at itself, there's immediately a kind of opening up. It stops. And then that vastness is experienced. That is like the sky. That's very simple. That's something really anybody can understand. If you take the mind, that thinking mind, and you try to find what is the source of that. You look, where does this come from? And you always get a kind of blank. You can't find something. And yet it's there. And yet there's consciousness. So we say the nature of mind is empty, yet cognizant. Or empty, yet radiant. Or empty and luminous. So its nature is that openness that you see. So this isn't something you have to develop. It's not something that you meditate a long time and then you see it. It's in every moment. You can just turn and look and see and open into that vastness. It's something that's really present everywhere for everyone. And it's not only present for human beings. This condition is universal. It's all beings have it as their source. It's the open, vast limitlessness. And so the more we can do that, turn that out-moving mind, turn it back to see its nature, which is empty, yet knows, it's aware. So it's empty, yet there's awareness. The more that we can do that, the more we can rest, relax in our true condition, in a state which is not fabricated. It's not something that's created when we do that. It's always present. But mostly we're so caught in our projections and in our chasing outwardly that we don't see it. And so that's really the purpose of meditation is really that stopping, looking, and resting. And then developing that as a habit so that we move away from that sort of galloping horse of the mind, or racing car, or plane, or jet, and we rest. And that's all.
This is what I would like for a retreat location. You know, I would like to be up on a mountain with just like a vast landscape around me. Pretty cool. Yeah. So I guess obviously from the past few days, I would disagree with the ontological statements there. One, the fact that like other beings share that is something that we're not allowed to say yet, perhaps. You know, that's not something that perhaps we even know we can't say, or that we can say the inverse, but we know we can't say it yet. And then the other part of like how anyone can get that even on day one. Like, I think that's just naivete coming from, you know, an ignorance of the science here. But, you know. All right. Toku Lob sang. Okay. Let's get a cue going here. We got that guy. Okay. Let's go through one response here. Okay, of course we are way higher. Okay, empirically validated outcomes. Early to mid-term trait changes. And do we have a thing for this? We do. We have started writing stuff for this, right? This is the wrong document. We've got okay, how it works, effects. I'm just gonna start another thing going here. Let's go 4. Let's do early to mid-term trait changes. Just like this, okay. These are the outcomes robustly supported by fMRI and clinical data for practitioners who sustain a daily practice. Executive attention and focus. The most immediate structural change is the strengthening of the central executive network. You are literally thickening the prefrontal cortex, which improves working memory and the top-down ability to sustain attention on a single target without fatigue. Beautiful. That one would be one of the most obvious that you might be able to just like come up with, like speculate on, just based on what you're doing in meditation. I put Stanrich and community head chatter and contributor on my resume. The recruiter was like, so tell me more about this community thing. And I was like, are you frontin'? I asked her if she was frontin'. Best believe that. Then she was like, no. And then she made a... Oh, it doesn't tell me what that face is. Is that just a smiley face, or is that a... What kind of face is that? So I mindfully wobbed her ass. Jesus. Best believe it. Don't get it twisted. Yikes. Well, I know this pursuit feels large, but the community is quite relatively small. Last one I sent is another non-dual thing. I don't know if you're done with that. No, I'm certainly not done with it, but I will probably add that type of commentary just so that if there's anyone lurking, or, you know, even just for myself, just so that we're all on the same page. But I do like that stuff. That stuff it's really nice. She seems really chill. She seemed so chill. The emojis don't get the little hover thing if they're next to text. I see. That's right. Okay. That's unfortunate. I was hoping that maybe if I hovered over at, like, it would do an eventual, I forget what that's called, tooltip, maybe? Okay, we got emotion regulation, amygdala top down regulation. So consistent practice decreases the physical gray matter volume of the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, and strengthens its functional connectivity to the prefrontal cortex. This means the gap between a stimulus, an insult, a loud noise, and your reaction widens, allowing for a deliberate response rather than a reflexive physiological cascade. So it gives your ventromedial prefrontal cortex a little more power. Okay, reward network resensitization to gently correct the lowering dopamine tolerance phrasing. It is more accurate to say meditation rehabilitates the reward prediction error system by repeatedly anchoring attention to low salient stimuli and starving the brain of its usual high dopamine digital social inputs. The baseline sensitivity of D2 receptors resets. Mundane experiences become phenomenologically richer. Okay. And then decoupling sensory pain from suffering. Studies on pain tolerance show that meditators feel the exact same intensity of raw sensory pain, somatosensory cortex activation, as non-meditators, but they show drastically reduced activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is all about anomalies and unexpected, or reacting to unexpected, or identifying unexpected stimuli, I guess. And insula is interpreting our bodily sensations, the regions responsible for the emotional unpleasantness of pain. All right. And I think these just make up the salient system, right? Those two are the salient system. Okay, the Yogi Horizon, advanced structural plasticity. All right, here we go. The Yogi Horizon. So this is going to be like long time meditation. Advanced structural plasticity. Famous story about Ramana Maharshi making a cow enlightened. Whoa, how does that happen? And it cried or something. That lines up with the two arrows parable. Yeah, I'm curious how they would know that. Like, first of all, what they would mean by the cow is enlightened. It would be very difficult to be able to figure out what that would mean. Don't let Disney hear this, bro. Okay, the Yogi Horizon. When researchers like Davidson study Olympic-level meditators, tens of thousands of hours of practice, they observe functional and structural anomalies that point to what the human nervous system is ultimately capable of achieving. We get permanent DMN alteration. In novice meditators, the default mode network, responsible for mind wandering and the narrative sense of self, deactivates during focus but roars back to life the second focus drops. In advanced yogis, the DMN shows altered baseline connectivity even when they are not meditating. The rigid narrative self permanently shifts to a more fluid experiential self. Okay. Now, okay. If I were to give my general opinion on this, I'm not sure where I would want to be. I don't know if I would want to be completely experiential self, because I do enjoy indulging in in interpretation. I know that sounds weird, but like I enjoy being caught up in a story and getting excited of, you know, about some type of interesting narrative. Now, I don't know, maybe that's not what I should be taking from this, but there's some aspect of getting lost in thought that I do enjoy. I wouldn't want to get completely rid of it. Certainly, I would like more control than I currently have. That's for sure. But there would be a limit. There would be a ceiling that I wouldn't be able to hit with my current, or not with my current, but with the amount of training that I would like to do throughout my life. So I think there's no concern there. Gamma wave synchrony. Advanced practitioners exhibit sustained high-amplitude gamma band oscillations across the brain, both during practice and at rest. Gamma waves are associated with high-level cognitive binding, bringing disparate sensory info into a single conscious percept. Subjectively, this correlates with the phenomenological reports of non-duality or a pervasive, unbroken clarity of awareness. This is something I just couldn't intuit yet. Like, there's no way I can empathize with what this feels like. What would be the closest way for me to empathize? Is there a drug that does this? Can I get on a drug that makes me feel this type of synchrony? Is that possible? Okay, extreme autonomic control through interoceptive training. I don't know what interoceptive training means. Advanced practitioners demonstrate the ability to consciously modulate autonomic functions previously thought to be completely involuntary. For example, the immune response, core body temperature, and heart rate variability. All right, we're at Wim Hof stuff. The hard limitations, what meditation will not do. This is the most critical section for setting realistic expectations. The failure to acknowledge these limitations leads to profound disillusionment in practice. Okay. It does not cure clinical pathology. Meditation is a cognitive training tool, not a psychiatric panacea. While it reduces generalized anxiety, it cannot cure severe clinical depression, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. In fact, intense retreats can occasionally trigger psychotic breaks or severe dissociative episodes in predisposed individuals, often referred to in the literature as the dark night. It does not eradicate the ego. The idea of permanent ego death is largely a myth. The DMN evolved for a reason. You need a narrative self to navigate society, plan for the future, and remember your passwords. Meditation makes the ego transparent and flexible, allowing you to put it down when it is not useful, but it does not delete it. Okay. It does not grant moral or rational perfection. A highly trained salience network does not automatically equal ethical behavior or logical infallibility. There are countless historical and modern examples of enlightened Zen masters and gurus who exhibited horrific ethical lapses. Meditation trains attentional control. It does not replace the need for rigorous philosophical inquiry, moral reasoning, and psychological shadow work. Shadow work? What does that mean? It cannot replace conceptual problem solving. If you are facing a complex logistical philosophical problem, sitting on a cushion and observing the breath will not solve it. That being said, there's something to say about meditation and creativity. So can I link a food video? Sure. D-Money Industry. Ethical lapses. Yeah, that was a sus phrasing of that. How bad are we talking about? Is it just like, you know, I accidentally, I stumbled on saying something mean, like I accidentally let something mean flip or slip? Or are they talking like these people like actually just, you know, murdered a family or something? Okay, I'm missing. We've got a cow. Right, we got the cow. David Godman. Whoa. I think, what does that mean? There's a famous story of a Zen master cutting off someone's finger to make them enlightened. Now, was that like, that wasn't necessarily a, like an unethical thing though, right? I mean, I guess you could say that's unethical in like fundamentally, but if they were both down with it, then I wouldn't think that's too bad. It would have to be like doing something that we would just that is so obviously like he knows he's doing something wrong. I'm pretty sure, bro. I'm pretty sure they mean like straight on war. Yeah, that's what I would imagine. Granted, the war, you could also not think you're doing something wrong. Buddha cut my arm off. Nice. Well, yeah, you just have to meditate the pain away. Okay. This morning I put on Facebook list and sent a few photographs. Okay, how long is this? Oh no. Okay. If it's all right, I'm going to Gemini this one. Can you explain the story? What's the bro what? Or just how long that was, or? Okay, then let's get here we go. Let's get the knowledge of arising and passing away. Did I finish this? Yes. Extrapolate, blah, blah, blah. The ultimate outcome of... Okay, then our next thing is what experiences can I expect on retreat? Given that I haven't meditated for longer than 20 minutes in a day ever. Oh, the length, yeah. There's a lot to say about the cow.
Hello friends, welcome back. I'm Beth, here to help you fulfill your potential in meditation. As most of you know, I don't have just one method that I teach to everybody. Like
a goal for my short term, or are you saying like a goal for my lifelong practice? Like what kind of scope? I mean, we shouldn't obviously create such a stringent expectation, but I'm just curious about the timeline of this type of goal.
One size fits all. Instead, I much prefer to teach people one-on-one. And the reason is that you're all different. So please use these videos as a guideline. And if there's anything that isn't quite working for you or anything that doesn't quite fit, then be in touch and I'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you one-on-one. Today's video is about deepening our Vipassana practice through Udaya, Baya, Jnana. Now, what does that mean? Well, Jnana is knowledge and Udaya Baya is arising and passing away. So this is the knowledge of arising and passing away. Now, if you've been paying attention, then you will understand that this stage of our Vipassana practice comes after Samasana Jnana. I've made a separate video about Samasana Jnana, so if you haven't done so already, I suggest that you go away and watch that video and do the practice if you can, so that this will make lots of sense to you. Now, if you've been...
Should I do that? Or should I just look this one up real quick? Posture designed to balance body, mind, and energy, specifically targeting the solar plexus and stimulating the digestive fire. Involves lying on the stomach, lifting one leg at a time. Okay. Why? Okay, out of curiosity, why would that be necessary? Oh, that's not it? That's not what she's referring to? Knowledge of mind and body, okay.
Been paying attention, then you will know that in Samasana Jnana, we are also paying attention to arising and passing away. We're already paying attention to ultimate reality, the building blocks of materiality and mentality, and we're paying attention to them momentarily arising and passing away. and we're paying attention to them as being anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanent, suffering, and non-self. So we are already spending long periods of time in our Vipassana practice fully absorbed in the arising and passing away of materiality and mentality, free from any kind of concept. So, what changes when we progress to Udaya Bhaya Jnana? Well, when we are fully absorbed in the arising and passing away of ultimate reality, fully absorbed in the arising and passing away of materiality mentality, the three characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and non-self should start to become more and more clear to us.
What? Okay, what does she mean?
Free from any kind of concept. So, what changes when we progress to Udaya Bhaya Jnana? Well, when we are fully absorbed in the arising and passing away of ultimate reality.
What would she mean by that? So I understand the second phrase here.
Fully absorbed in the arising and passing away of materiality mentality.
So the arising and passing away of, I'll just, the way that I always talk about this, like of concepts itself, of any thoughts, of any meaning, anything that's being disclosed to you through consciousness. What would it mean that, like I would assume that the ultimate reality is a description of this arising and passing away, but is that something separate? Such a Burmese way to explain it. Remember, I said Theravada is like solipsistic. Whatever they directly experience is the most empirical, the most ultimate. Okay, so that would be so. Okay, so I guess I'm struggling with the idea of is there like a recursion here that you're noticing the fundamental nature also passing away, arising and passing away, as well as obviously the arising and passing away of all other more concrete thoughts? She just means the experience of seeing, feeling. These are considered ultimate reality in Theravada. Okay. So then how does that differ from material? Is that more conceptual thought? More like, more, articulated and wordy? Yeah, the sixth sense doors are rising and passing. Okay, out of curiosity, what happened to the D-Money Industry? What happened to this food video? What? That should do that. That's a good bit. Just join a stream for the first time, ask a question like that, and bounce. Yeah, the sixth sense doors are rising and passing away. Ah, okay. All right.
The three characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and non-self should start to become more and more clear to us. Everything is momentarily arising and passing away, so it's impermanent. Because it's momentarily arising and passing away, it's also suffering. There's no peace or happiness to be found anywhere in it. And because we can't stop it from momentarily arising and passing away, because it's conditioned, it's also non-self. But as we observe,
as a a linguistic guy, and at some point this channel might become more about linguistic practices and logic and stuff like that. I don't know. That might be what we're doing next month. I'm not sure. But
be found anywhere in it. And because we can't stop it from momentarily arising and
this type of claim is like it's carrying some weight of like a logic system that really isn't obvious.
Can't stop it from momentarily arising and passing away because it's conditioned. It's also non-self. But as we observe,
oh wait, what was the first one?
So suffering.
That one.
So it's impermanent. Because it's momentarily arising and passing away, it's also suffering.
So yeah, like why does something that's impermanent necessarily have to be suffering? But I guess maybe there's just more semantic weight behind what this idea of suffering is here. Like that to me, that's not like a sufficient argument. I mean, you could, you know, you could have that being one of the reasons why it would be suffering, but you would need more than that, I think. But of course, we're not operating in like a, you know, a colloquial rule set here. What we're operating in a there's probably a lot of rules that I'm not aware of when using these words. Her explanation is very technical, to be honest. I would describe it in like 2 sentences. You do enough open monitoring Vipassana and start to notice the senses the moment they arise and sometimes the moment they pass, and this characteristic of arising becomes most salient. Okay. Now, the thing that I don't understand is, like, how is that not, like, one of the easiest things I could do? Like, how come I can't do that right now? I feel like that's what I do already. This is, like, one of the things I look out for, especially because Sam's prompted me to do that. What is the difference between this practice and where I need to end up here? The knowledge. I feel like I have the knowledge already, but I need a better integrate these expectations into my, you know, into my brain. Good morning, Birdbanes. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend.
There's no peace or happiness to be found anywhere in it. And because we can't stop it from momentarily arising and passing away because it's conditioned, it's also non-self.
Yeah, another thing that
as we observe,
I don't know if this is like how you're supposed to go about it, but
arising and passing away.
My meditation practice, like, it feels, unless I'm doing like a specific metta or I'm prompted to think about a certain thing, it's very what's the word? It's very apathetic, right? Like, I kind of took the non-judgmental aspect of it and I took it to its extreme, where I'm not trying to judge or indulge in a positive way. Like, I just, you know, complete apathy, just complete, you're just noticing. Like, that's it. All right, you can get a sense of it, but it takes an increase in perceptual skills to really notice it the exact moment, and that experience of arising has a characteristic feel to it that becomes more obvious. Okay, so then it's really, so there's a real difficulty here where at each point in my journey I'm going to feel as though I know this feeling better than I used to, but at no point will there be like an experience so obvious that I've made it, right? Like, if I keep going, I'll keep getting an even better view of this thing. Like, there's no step function where we're going like on a, I mean, but maybe there is like a phenomenal jump in theory. But didn't you watch this already during the last session? Beth Upton's got a lot of videos. We didn't end up watching this one though. This was the one that Dharmanam had recommended during the stream. And yes, Sam might be getting it from Theraveda and mixing in stuff like that, right? Yes, it's confusing, and then you have enough experience, then it's plain as day when it's happening or has happened. Okay. Nice, yeah.
Of materiality and mentality, we might imagine that there lies something outside of this momentary arising and perishing, which could control it or stop it or produce it or do something about it. And so as we deepen our practice into Udayabhaya Jnana, we need to also see that the causes for all of this momentary arising and passing away, materiality and mentality, is also impermanent, suffering and non-self. So let's take a few examples. We could start, for example, by seeing that a certain aspect of materiality is arising and passing away right now. We can then reflect on that aspect of materiality being impermanent, suffering and non-self. And we can do that to the point where we are fully absorbed in the arising and passing away of that aspect of materiality.
Does she mean like within a practice?
What are the causes for that aspect of materiality? Was it produced by materiality in a previous kalapa? Was it produced by the mind? Was it produced by karma? And we can then turn our attention to that cause, and we can also see that that
I think she's outside.
Is momentarily arising and passing away. That cause is also
we definitely get the
anicca, dukkha, anatta.
surround
impermanent
here.
suffering, and non-self. We could also take, for example, an aspect of mentality, let's say a certain type of consciousness, and right now we can see it's momentarily arising and passing away. We can absorb in the perception of that type of consciousness being impermanent, suffering, and non-self, anicca, dukkha, anatta. We can then ask ourselves, well, what is the cause of that type of consciousness? Maybe it's some action that we've done in the past, a type of karma, and we can then see that that karma is also momentarily arising.
Whoa, okay, so karma has this idea of predisposition as we use it in the document. It's kind of this idea that we, when things happen, that it predisposes us in some way. But, you know, I imagine it gets taken. See, once you lose your grounding in the actual science that explains how something would actually predispose you, then you can start going and creating larger post hoc story, like retrospective stories of, you know, why things happen. And that's where we have to be careful about that type of concept. I think the hardest concept to swallow is karma. Just in general, you're saying? Okay, so this is another thing about the practice, Dharmadam, that I maybe am confused by. This idea of noticing something going away. See, noticing something arriving is easy because it's here, right? But once something goes away, you know, our consciousness isn't like a... it's not like a space that's often empty and then things come in and come out, and it's like anytime an aspect of consciousness goes away, another aspect of consciousness takes its place. So yeah, my question is like, how, like, you know, if I'm actually trying to pay attention to anything that arises, then when something goes away, I'm paying attention to something else. So do I, like, is the idea that I want that thing that I'm supposed to be paying attention to as like the interpretation of the other thing going away, which seems a little odd. Okay. Yeah, I don't see the point in using so much Sanskrit, but I think she has a lot of respect for her teachers or something. Can look into Abhidharma theory. Here is some of the theory. Okay.
Rising and passing away. It's also anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanent, suffering, and non-self. We can then continue the same basic process with all of the different types of materiality and mentality that we've come to be familiar with. So that's what I have to say today on deepening our Vipassana practice into Udaya Bhaya Jnana, also including the causes and conditions in our perceptions of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. If there's anything that's unclear to you, anything you're unsure about, then be in touch. I'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you one-on-one. But now is the time to get off of those screens, get onto the cushions, actually do the practice. There is a remainderless ending of all suffering, so let's not waste time. As most of you know, I do all of my work on a donation basis.
All right. All right, more questions about the retreat day. What experiences can I expect on the retreat, given that I haven't meditated for longer than 20 minutes in a day ever? That I might have changed. I think I changed that the other day because I did a guided meditation that was like 19 minutes and 50 seconds or something, and then I kept going for like a little bit after that because I didn't know that it stopped. There was nothing telling me that it stopped, so okay. Going from a maximum of just under 20 minutes a day to a 14-hour bed-to-bed retreat is an exponential leap in cognitive and physical volume. To put it in strength training terms, you are jumping from a weight to a 1 rep max for multiple sets. Because you're approaching this through the lens of neurodynamics and predictive processing, you could treat these expected hurdles not as failures, but as highly predictable data points. All right. I think it's a little too primed by this discussion of predictive processing and stuff like that. It starts using that jargon. The morning, the honeymoon phase. The first few hours will feel excellent. Your executive function is fully rested. Your top-down attentional control is strong, and the novelty of the retreat provides enough dopamine to keep the salience network satisfied. You will likely feel a sense of rigorous accomplishment during your morning waking up session and your first walking meditation. Midday, mechanical friction and somatic prediction errors. Around the 3rd or 4th hour, your biology will assert itself. Your muscles, fascia, I don't even know what that means, and joints, bodily structures. Okay. Okay. So stuff that I wouldn't be able to notice other than through just random interoceptive signals. And joints are adapted to holding a meditation posture for 20 minutes, not accumulating hours of stillness. You will experience mechanical pain, likely in the knees, lower back, or between the shoulder blades. Your peripheral nervous system will send high salience nociceptive signals. Your brain will register a massive prediction error. We are normally moving by now. Tissue damage is imminent. The default mode network will immediately try to conceptualize the pain. I'm going to injure blah, 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 blah. This is your first real test of de-reification. You must actively decouple the raw sensory data from the affective suffering. Early afternoon, the wall and cognitive rebellion. Oh no. This is not fun. All right, let's Okay, the going away is really a moment of the sense information and then a mental experience with some small amount of content that processes the senses. Theory is that only one thing ever appears in consciousness at a time and the mind weaves it together. So sometimes the 6 senses doors are all chiming in and it's very choppy. If I just focus my vision though, then it alternates between that on and off state, so it's less chaotic. It's very trippy. I love scanning the body heaps and then feeling my whole body strobe or build up strong joy or equanimity, whatever, and feel that strobing. Okay. I got to figure out what this strobing feels like. All right, around the 3rd or 4th hour, your body will assert itself. Okay. You will experience mechanical pain, likely in the knees, lower back, or between the shoulder blades. Your peripheral nervous system will send high salience nociceptive signal. Okay, we went to that, right? Early afternoon, the wall. When you remove your usual external stimuli, the brain's dopamine baseline plummets. When the brain is starved of exogenous salience, it generates endogenous salience to force you to act. You will hit a wall of profound agonizing boredom and restlessness. The DMN will aggressively attempt to reclaim the global workspace from your executive function. Because you have a highly analytical mind, the DMN will not just distract you with random daydreams, it will use your intellect against you. Uh-oh. You'll experience meta-doubt. Your brain will generate highly rational philosophical arguments for why you should abort the retreat. Oh my gosh. You must recognize this not as a profound philosophical insight, but as a standard neurobiological defense mechanism against dopamine deprivation, noted as high salience conceptualization, and stick strictly to the timer. That's why I need to make sure that I'm not overdoing it within this schedule. I got to come up with more activities, perhaps. More very basic activities. Okay, or build up strong joy or equanimity, whatever and feel that strobing. But notice how different that is from anything Tibet talks about. The different experiences are what I associate most with the traditions. So you're saying, okay, so this is Theravada's This is Theravada's strength. It's like describing phenomenal experiences. Maybe they do talk about it, I don't know, but they have their own thing. Standela effect, the Mandela effect. What's good, Daniel End? Welcome back. Happy Friday. Okay, the Burmese practice. I see. Okay. Yeah, I think that would be interesting to. We should really. I gotta consider a prompt for that. So we have to look into that as like a topic. How do I want to do this? Practical effects, toolkit, concepts to understand. How about something like a phenomenological roadmap? Now, this could, you know, I wouldn't want this to just be like the jhanas. I would want to integrate those within a more comprehensive roadmap of things to expect. And yeah, so maybe we could spend a day on that. Spend a day on this. Look into Vipassana jhanas, another word for it. Is that not the same? That's what we mean. That's what I mean by the jhanas, right? That's the same thing. The jhanas and samadhi. Oh. Whoa. Okay, so are these so were these samatha jhanas? Is that what we've been talking about previously? Oh, okay. And then we have to do Vipassana jhanas. Okay. All right. Okay, late afternoon, altered salience and sensory anomalies. If you successfully push through the cognitive rebellion, you will exhaust the DMN's ability to constantly generate narrative friction. As your top-down priors flatten, the precision weighting on mundane sensory data shifts. The perceptual frame rate changes. You may suddenly find the texture of your lunch, the exact temperature of the air from the open window, or the geometric patterns of the floorboards to be intensely fascinating or overwhelmingly detailed. Because you have stopped assigning high precision to the self and your internal narratives, the brain reallocates that processing power to raw exteroceptive data, clinging to this state. The trap is clinging to this state. It can feel very profound, leading you to think, this is it, I am meditating correctly now. The moment you conceptualize it as a success, you have reinstated a high-level narrative prior. So the strategy would be note the increased sensory clarity simply as altered exteroceptive salience and return to the anchor. Right. Okay. Evening, executive fatigue. By the time you reach the evening, candle gazing and closing sessions, your prefrontal cortex will be genuinely exhausted. Sustaining top-down attention is calorically and cognitively expensive. You may feel fried, spacey, or incredibly heavy. Keeping your attention on the breath might feel like trying to hold a heavy weight at arm's length. Conversely, you might experience a state of deep, effortless quiet because the brain simply lacks the energy to generate discursive thought. So the strategy is lower your expectations for granular focus in the final hours. Shift from narrow, concentrated effort to wide open permission. Let the mind rest in whatever state it is in without trying to manipulate it. By anticipating these phases, you completely remove the element of surprise. When your brain starts screaming at 2 p.m. that the retreat is an arbitrary waste of time, you can simply observe it as a scheduled neurobiological event. Okay, nice. is the 16 stages of insight. Okay. Oh, that's the insight stages? So this would be it? Vipassana jhanas, the 16 insight stages? And is this visible? Okay, it is. Nice. All right. On to the next.
In the highest of Tantrayana teachings, what we call completion teachings, we have identity completion teachings, and we have without identity and completion teachings. Without identity completion teaching name we call Rigpa or Dzogchen or Mahamudra. It's very simple.
Rigpa, Dzogchen, or Mahamudra? How many times do we have Dzogchen right now? Dzogchen. Okay, we have that there, and we talked about it here. Paradigm of non-dual. Now, do we have a... Oh, we do have Rigpa. In the Dzogchen tradition, this pristine, unconditioned, inherently awake awareness is known as Rigpa. Okay.
Means fundamental of Rigpa practice. We practice, nothing reject.
Fair warning. Nice.
We practice, nothing take. We not to practice reject something, we not to practice something take. And the part of Rigpa, we nothing practice something renounce, we nothing practice something achieve. Result of Rigpa practice, we nothing practice some expectations, and we nothing practice some fear. However, Rigpa means is nature of a mind, or Rigpa means nature awareness. In this nature awareness is the nature of all kind of mind, angry mind, ignorance mind, jealous mind, all kind of mind have nature of nature. Then all negative emotions have nature, have Rigpa nature. Rigpa nature means they have nature of the nature awareness. In this nature awareness, you no need to go beyond in this normal mind. Just you look and relax. Don't change anything. Don't reject anything. Don't expect anything. Just be, and you automatically discover in this nature awareness. Rigpa means nature awareness, and this nature awareness is within we, here now, in this simple mind. And how you discover this nature awareness? Just relax. Just relax. Just relax. Just relax. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Just relax. When you relax and your mind and the nature awareness appear herself, our mind is look like water. Our mind is look like moment is muddy or dirty water. Muddy and the dirty water, but the dirt and the mud or dirt is not change nature of the water. And the nature of water is always pure. It looks like water is become dirty, but water is not become dirty. The dirty water and the clean water is same. Nature is same. No.
It's so all these analogies are so funny, like or metaphors, I guess. and a lot of these metaphors are so excellent. There were even like so I was continuing reading the mindfulness book last night, and he dropped like a phenomenal metaphor. I forget what it was about, but they're just so on point. But it's funny that there's so many metaphors that some of these are like contradicting the other metaphors. If they were actually put next to each other, obviously they're metaphors for different things. But it's just funny that there's so many metaphors like about water or about windows or about mirrors. Yeah, good metaphor is amazing. Yep. And they're definitely, or a lot of these cultures are just phenomenal at these metaphors.
Nobody destruct in this nature. Looks like. But you just...
The primary method to experience is to do nothing. Right. Well, other than, so it's not just do nothing, because there's an inherent implication that you're supposed to notice. You're supposed to do nothing and then notice. Noticing is a thing, right? Once again, this is requiring your central executive network. You are doing something. You are exerting effort to notice. Now you can calm the mind, and you can try to do as little as you possibly can while still doing the noticing, but look up definition of non-meditation. That's what they practice. Okay, maybe I'm doing... Oh, we totally didn't even talk about the cow. Okay.
Just leave this dirty water. You just leave. Don't do anything. Don't reject. Don't take. Don't renounce. Don't practice. Don't fear. Don't expect. Just leave. And then, it's just you leave, and then this nature awareness is a nature awareness you discover. Nature awareness is not, we say, appear, but nature awareness is always there. Just you didn't discover. Same, you don't shake water, you don't change water, just water leave. Don't do anything, leave, and the water become clear herself. And that's we call meaning of Rigpa. Same, our mind is look like, this moment our mind is look like muddy water. And to become clean or clear or discover this nature of muddy water, what is method? Don't do anything. Just relax. Don't do anything, also don't do. Just be how is. And then you discover in this nature awareness. And this nature awareness, what we call waking mind, what we call Vajra mind, what we call basic goodness, what we call Buddha nature, whatever you want to call. And this is our true nature. This is undestructible, our nature is always there. And the highest of the Buddha Dharma teachings, they have a way to become enlightenment without doing anything. Without doing anything, their way to become enlightenment, that's what we call Rigpa practice. Rigpa practice, you practice, don't do anything. You don't do anything, that's what you need to do. You don't practice anything, that's what you need to practice. You don't look anything, and then you see everything. You don't look anything, and then you see everything. And you don't practice anything, that's what you need to practice. Then you discover this Rigpa practice.
Nice. Okay, that's not, that's what Okay, look up non-meditation. That's what they practice. Notice the parallels to Zen, just sitting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I am curious about this because yeah, what he was saying is different than what I'm saying, or what I was saying, and I guess my question is when you do that and your mind wants to start going in a different direction. What is that? What is that action of recentering or going back to doing nothing? Like, I don't know if that's actually doing nothing, because if you did nothing, then you would stay in that state of your mind going crazy. So you have to exert some effort to inhibit something, but maybe it's not as necessarily mindful as an open monitoring practice. Don't recenter. Don't change thought at all. So what happens though if I just get caught in thought for like 20 minutes? Like at some point I realize I just got caught in thought. Then what do I do? Do I just like... Yeah, I guess, but there's still this like idea that, yeah, now I have to do nothing, right? I have to, like, doing nothing is still a doing in my mind. Then you need to try it when you're better. Oh, okay, so is that how it works? It's like, if you can't do it, then you can't do it. Okay, non-meditation is an advanced contemplative concept and practice found primarily in the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. At its core, non-meditation is the practice of resting in the natural state of the mind without any conceptual contrivance, intentional effort, or directed focus. It is the recognition that ultimate nature of the mind is already perfect and continuously present, meaning any attempt to do meditation actually obscures it. Core characteristics: absence of effort. Okay. Collapse of subject-object duality. Okay, I gotta ask these questions. Okay, would this practice strengthen the CEN at all? In theory, you aren't exerting any effort. At the same time, it seems like it is a practice of inhibition, which does involve some leveraging of the CEN. If this practice didn't actually require effort, is it physically possible for any changes in the brain, like for example, strengthening the CEN, to occur? My understanding is that this practice does lead to progress for practiced yogis. I mean, anyone can do it, but as they say, it is their peak practice. Some do crazy amounts before they do non-meditation. Amounts of preliminary concentration stuff or whatever. This video is great. Okay. You could also ask about how at some point meditation requires no effort and how many traditions speak about that. Okay. I understand that a lot of traditions speak about how at some point meditation requires no effort. How does their practice progress in a neurological sense? What do they physically strengthen? Requires the keyword they. You can apply effort still if you want. Keyword there. Was this a word that you had used? Have I missed it there? Oh, you're saying that. Okay, I see. Okay, absence of effort. Collapse of subject-object duality. Okay, we would expect that, obviously. You don't need to do this type of practice to collapse subject-object duality, I don't think. Because even a practice in which you're supposed to notice something, obviously the premise has this subjective aspect to it, like you are noticing it. But even that type of practice can get ingrained such that you don't have to actually think about the subject-object dichotomy, and you just do without necessarily effort. But it's still a practice of noticing. It's just you don't have to think about noticing. Now, I don't think that's what non-meditation is talking about, but maybe that is what it's talking about. All right, spontaneous practice. Rather than trying to create a calm state or destroy negative thoughts, the practitioner allows whatever arises in consciousness to simply be without grasping or rejecting. Okay, so now this is now akin to what I'm thinking about, except there's just a difference between when you're still needing to prime yourself and when you've ingrained that automatic procedure. I think the main function in Tibetan Zen is to have a non-dual experience with the same practice. Okay. Beyond construct and antidote. In early stages of meditation, calm is used as an antidote to distraction. In non-meditation, the practitioner discards the use of antidotes entirely, recognizing both calm and distraction as equal expressions of the mind's nature. Right. Paradox of practice. From an epistemological standpoint, non-meditation presents a paradox. If it requires no effort and is already our natural state, why is it considered the most advanced stage of practice? Contemporary consensus among contemplative scholars and traditional texts suggests that a practitioner's mind is typically too habituated to conceptual thinking and distraction to simply rest. Therefore, rigorous, effortful meditation is required first to stabilize the mind and dismantle cognitive habits. Only after immense effort can a practitioner successfully drop the effort and sustain true non-meditation without immediately falling back into ordinary distraction. Okay. Do we write this down as a... This is going to be a... This isn't even... Should this even be under open monitoring? Or is that... I guess that kind of follows. Just sitting... Is that the same as do nothing? Or... wherever it naturally occurs. Non-meditation and just sitting. Okay, crucial tension in contemplative neuroscience, but it relies on a slight misconception about how advanced meditation operates in the brain. To give you the direct pushback you prefer. Non-meditation is not a practice of inhibition, and its primary neurological goal is not to strengthen the central executive network. Okay. In fact, actively leveraging the CEN for top-down cognitive control, which includes suppressing thoughts or forcefully holding attention, is precisely the effort that non-meditation seeks to abandon. If a practitioner is actively inhibiting thoughts, they are doing concentration meditation, not non-meditation. Okay. The shifting role of the CEN in early effortful meditation, the CEN is highly active. So, okay, you already have a big CEN. Now you have to do that. Now you get to do this. The paradigm shifts. Neuroimaging of advanced practitioners show a drop in the CEN activation compared to novices. The neurological progression is not about infinitely increasing the muscle of the CEN. It's about neural efficiency. The brain no longer needs to exert heavy metabolic energy to maintain awareness. Okay. So, okay, I understand it's not inhibition. What physically progresses in an effortful state? If there is no active effort, how does the brain physically change? The physical progression shifts from building muscle to automating pathways. Myelination and synaptic pruning. Decades of effortful practice build specific neural pathways. When a practitioner drops the effort, they are relying on these highly myelinated, efficient circuits. Repeatedly resting in this effortless state reinforces these efficient pathways, making the state easier to access and sustain over time. Okay. Tuning the salience network. So the salience network, which is responsible for monitoring internal and external events and switching between the DMN and CEN. In advanced yogis, the the salience network becomes incredibly precise. It monitors awareness perfectly without needing to constantly alarm the CEN to take control. So downregulating the posterior cingulate cortex, which is associated with getting caught up in experience or narrative self. The studies consistently show that advanced effortless awareness is characterized by deep baseline deactivation of the PCC. Okay, you could think of early meditation like learning to ride a bike. It requires massive, effortful top-down control to inhibit falling and force balance. Non-meditation is like a master cyclist riding with no hands. The cyclist is exerting almost zero cognitive effort regarding balance. However, by continually riding in that effortless state, the cerebellum and motor cortex are still physically reinforcing these automated pathways, ensuring the state of balance becomes a permanent physical trait. Okay. Now, what would this type of practice affect for in the brain for what do I want to say here? How would this type of practice affect longer term changes in the brain that would affect experience outside of practice? What has evidence so far, and what is more speculative? Okay. I would say that it is actually one of the main strengths of Do Nothing. It helps experience non-duality. They say Theravada enlightenment is like cookie cutter. Personality is maintained but is purified or whatever in a predictable way, whereas Zen enlightenment exaggerates, heightens personality. The technique can be said to involve feeding off your own energy. Interesting. I wonder what they're getting at. Or is it just the state that you arrive at through different practices? The transition of meditative states into permanent baseline neurological traits, how your brain operates while you are doing dishes, having an argument, or driving, is the ultimate goal of non-meditation. In contemplative science, this is known as state-to-trait transfer. Okay. Because non-meditation, often studied as non-dual awareness or advanced open monitoring, relies on dropping effort and resting in the nature of the mind. The long-term changes are less about building cognitive muscle and more about dismantling rigid automated neurological habits. So, evidence-based long-term changes. The following neurological changes in advanced practitioners are well supported by fMRI and EEG data. Baseline deactivation of the DMN. Okay. Right. Evidence shows that advanced practitioners exhibit a permanent baseline downregulation of the posterior cingulate cortex, a major DMN node. Outside of practice, this translates to experiencing thoughts and emotions as transient events rather than absolute truths. You still have thoughts, but they lack the magnetic stickiness that usually leads to spiral anxiety or rumination. Okay, amygdala decoupling, so emotional equanimity. When a sudden stressor occurs, the amygdala fires. In an untrained brain, this immediately recruits the prefrontal cortex to construct a panic narrative, locking the brain into a stress response. In advanced practitioners, the amygdala still fires. They still feel the physiological jolt of surprise or anger, but it is decoupled from the narrative centers. The emotion arises and dissipates incredibly fast, resulting in a baseline trait of equanimity and shorter refractory periods for negative emotion. And then we've got the divergence of pain process. Okay, so all this stuff was actually reflected in what we started out with today. The effects. We've got the amygdala decoupling. And we've got the divergence of pain. That's this guy. And what was the first one here? Baseline deactivation of the DMN. I think we... Oh, I guess that was the Yogi Horizon. Permanent DMN alteration. Yeah, okay. Thermal pain tests show a radical shift in how pain is processed. The somatosensory cortex, which registers the raw physical sensation of heat and pain, activates more intensely than in novices. However, the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex, areas responsible for the subjective unpleasantness or suffering, remain largely inactive. In daily life, this means a heightened sensitivity to sensory input, but a dramatic reduction in the psychological suffering normally attached to it. Okay, cool. Speculative and emerging hypotheses. This is going to be fun. All right, we've got the global gamma synchrony, which we have over here, as quote-unquote enlightenment. It is highly speculative to claim that permanent baseline gamma synchrony is the definitive neurological signature of enlightenment or permanent non-dual awareness outside of practice. So, okay, while this synchrony is undeniably present as a state during non-meditation, it's a question of whether this is, like, I guess, persistent. Predictive processing and flattening priors. Wait, what is going on here? I didn't prime this one with predictive processing. Is this like a normal thing, a way to talk about meditation? It doesn't grab for my other conversations. Okay, a cutting edge theory suggests the brain is a prediction machine that constantly hallucinates reality based on past data. The hypothesis is that non-meditation permanently flattens these rigid priors. Instead of strictly predicting and categorizing every daily event, which causes friction when reality doesn't match the prediction, the brain becomes highly receptive to bottom-up, raw sensory data. This elegantly explains the freshness of non-dual perception, but it is currently a theoretical mathematical model for computational neuroscience, rather than something we can clearly capture on an fMRI, right? Because it's rather like a high-level interpretation of what we're seeing. All right, permanent eradication of the self. While we can measure the reduced DMN activity, mapping that directly to the traditional phenomenological claim of a permanent dissolved ego is scientifically fraught. So this would be an entirely selfless experience. This was one of our hard limitations. Does not eradicate the ego. The self is not localized to a single brain region. It is an emergent property, proving empirically that a subject has zero continuous sense of self outside of formal practices currently beyond our neurobiological measurement capabilities. Okay, so this was pretty in line with what we did earlier in a different convo. Now, we could say that Gemini is corrupted in an equal way all around, but I think this is just, I don't know, maybe showing that there's a pattern here. Okay, let's learn about the cow. The story of Lakshmi, the cow, is a well-known narrative from the Sri Ramanasramam, the ashram of the Hindu sage. Okay, to understand the story clearly, it is necessary to separate the documented historical events of her life from the theological and mystical interpretations assigned to her. So, the historical reality. The verifiable aspects of the story center on a profound documented bond between a human and an animal. Okay, a devotee brought a 6-month-old calf and her mother to the ashram as an offering. Ramana initially refused, noting the ashram lacked the infrastructure to care for the livestock, but devotees insisted on taking responsibility. The calf was named Lakshmi. Lakshmi displayed a highly unusual, persistent attachment to Ramana. Even when housed elsewhere, she would frequently break loose, navigate her way through town, and return to the ashram to be near him. By 1930, she was moved to the ashram permanently. Hell yeah. The routine. For years, she was a central fixture at the ashram. She exhibited habituated behaviors, such as arriving precisely at meal times to be fed by Ramana, preferring a specific type of hill plantain, and standing quietly outside the hall during daily satsangs, spiritual gatherings. When she was injured, such as when a rope was pierced through her nose by a handler, she reportedly bypassed others and went directly to Ramana for comfort, bleeding and covered in mud. Okay, so the theological claim here. Liberation. Within the religious framework of the ashram, Lakshmi was not viewed as a standard animal, but as a highly advanced soul who had taken the form of a cow specifically to be near the sage. She was treated as an equal to human devotees. Ramana often defended her behavior when she ruined gardens or interrupted gatherings, insisting she be allowed free reign. Okay, so she fell severely ill. Ramana went to her, placed his right hand on her heart and his left on her head, a gesture of spiritual initiation. She died shortly after. The declaration was that Ramana explicitly stated that Lakshmi had attained final liberation from the cycle of reincarnation. This is a radical declaration in Orthodox Hindu theology, which generally holds that only humans possess the necessary consciousness to achieve enlightenment. She was given a ceremonial burial, and a shrine was built over her grave, which remains active today. All right, evidence and contemporary consensus. When analyzing the story through the lens of logic and contemporary science, we must categorize the events correctly. The historical accounts of Lakshmi's behavior align with modern ethology. Cattle are highly social, intelligent mammals capable of recognizing individuals, understanding complex routines, and forming deep, affectionate bonds with humans, especially when raised in an environment characterized by extreme gentleness and consistent positive reinforcement. Her habituation to the ashram schedule and her seeking out Ramana for safety and food are empirically sound examples of animal conditioning and emotional attachment. Okay, anthropomorphism. The ashram's historical records frequently project human spiritual motivations onto biological behaviors. For example, if Lakshmi closed her eyes while being petted, devotees recorded that she was in samadhi, a meditative trance. If her eyes watered, she was described as weeping out of spiritual devotion. The limits, though, the core of the Lakshmi story, that an animal achieves spiritual liberation, is a tenet of faith. There is no empirical framework to measure or validate moksha. Ultimately, the story of Lakshmi is a documented case of exceptional interspecies companionship that was subsequently elevated into a spiritual mythos by the religious community observing it. All right. This wasn't that long ago, by the way. When was this? We just saw the date. 1948. Wow. 1926 to 1948. 22 years. That's awesome. All right. Lakshmi the cow. That's pretty cool. Okay. What else do we have? Okay, we've got time, right? Okay, so this is really long. What was this one? This is our expectations of this is the day retreat. Now this is this guy, so I can say something like, okay, I've made significant progress on my notes document. Can you help me fill in anything that is missing? Perhaps empty headers or something I haven't even considered yet. What else would you say about my progress. It's gonna comment on my day retreat. It's gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? Romano, pretty trippy. He thought a hill he lived near had God living in it. All right. I mean, I guess that's more grounded than thinking God is everywhere. He's a non-dual beast, though. Ramana, dope. Nice. So yeah, what makes you a beast in this field? Is it about your teachings? Like, is it about your, like, what you've said? Or is it about what other people have said about your practice? Or is it the kind of a mix of all these things? Okay. All right.
A lot of the techniques that I give you, the noting techniques and so forth, they require a certain amount of effort. It's good to be able to drop effort also. The techniques I give you involve a certain amount of making decisions, even moment by moment. When you're doing a noting, if more than one phenomenon is available, you have to sort of choose. And also you choose sort of what approaches you're working on. So it's also good to have a practice that involves no choices whatsoever. Not even a choice as to directing what's happening in attention.
Right, unfortunately, because it's so long, I'm going to give it the old playback speed.
So some people call this choiceless awareness.
Which
some
is,
people
I
call
know
it
this is
just
so,
sitting.
it's so inappropriate to make like a, a meditation teacher go faster.
Some people call it the Great
Nah, speed 'em
Perfection
up.
in Tibetan Dzogchen, or the grand symbol,
What was that pronunciation?
just sitting. Some people call it the Great Perfection in Tibetan Dzogchen,
Dzogchen?
or the grand symbol in Sanskrit, Mahamudra. There's different ways of describing it. I like to call it do nothing. That's just my name for it. So there is a way to do nothing, a conceptual framework. Needless to say, because the verb do and nothing don't go together, there are some subtleties as to what this all refers to. The do nothing technique is designed with time. I cannot overemphasize that phrase. With time, not when you practice it at a given occasion, but with time. It is designed to create a sensitivity for a certain circuit in human consciousness, the circuit that controls attention.
Isn't this exactly not what we just learned?
And it sets up an environment wherein that circuit will turn itself off for a while.
Oh, what are we talking about? Maybe we were talking about the salience circuit. We could talk about that. We could say that the salience circuit is in some sense turning itself off. Now, this isn't an appropriate way to talk about like neuroscience, the way he's talking about this. But yeah, we could allow this. This is fine.
If you try to turn it off, obviously that's not going to exactly work, is it? Because you're trying to turn off, you have to keep it on in order to try to turn it off. The do nothing technique doesn't involve your hand turning off yourself, okay? It sets up a situation where nature will grow that hand, reach around and turn off the robot self for a brief period of time. At some point, you and the world will come back. So nothing bad at all will happen. You don't have to be afraid. So that's one way to look at the do nothing technique. With time, it will set the stage. You'll develop a sensitivity for the part of you that controls attention, and that's a very, very primitive part of our being. And then once that sensitivity is developed, it will for periods of time turn off. A lot of people report, when I ask them about their experience in practice, well, I can't decide what to do certain times. Like, I'm just like confused with all the options. That's a really good experience. I know you think it's a bad experience, but actually that's a good experience, because when you sort of like, I don't know what to do with my meditation right now.
I feel
the
like
part that controls attention is maximally activated at that time. That's the thing that's going to turn off through the do nothing technique. But when it's maximally activated, it's good to know, because that points you to, oh, that's the place. Whatever place this sort of, I don't know what to do and I should be able to figure out what to do next. Whenever that confusion about what should I do with the practice arises, that's a strong arising from the place of choice. That's good, because for a moment your attention is adverted to the place of choice. Love that. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad time to do nothing. The instruction set for how to do nothing is very short, just 2 sentences. Let whatever happens happen. As soon as you're aware of an intention to control your attention, drop that intention. So let's go through.
So yeah, there still requires obviously like an intention going into the practice that you're going to do nothing, and then there's obviously the intention of dropping whatever has come up. But that's not that big of a deal. It's not something that actually requires your central executive, of course, as we've just discovered. Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like I've skipped over a lot of the simpler practices, and I've gone to the immediate one of just noticing the like most abstractly aspects of experience, which I guess makes sense coming from Sam Harris. I feel like that's how he teaches it, and he teaches it in a simple way. Perhaps I should still, yeah, I mean, obviously I should still work on focused awareness just for the gains, focused gains. Can really practice however you want, right? Yep. Yeah, I think we'll want to look into the nuances of which practices specifically are giving you which of these benefits, and then obviously we could lay that all out. And then there's the further idea of talking about either for part 1, the way in which you can think about your experience and the way in which you can meditate for the sake of noticing that aspect of experience. And then for part 3, a way you can think about your own trajectory in life, your own development towards whatever. And that obviously requires us also to look into these cultures, like the broader culture and the different concepts within it. Now, the question is, are we going to just save that for a epilogue, or are we going to... We probably shouldn't just save it for an epilogue. Part 2 is going to be I think part 2 needs to be much more like science heavy than part 3 needs to be. Because we need to acknowledge in part 3 that there's so much about your identity or your understanding of what you're doing in a broad sense, whether that's moral or that's just, your spiritual trajectory, just whatever you're working on, your place, that affects your positive well-being. And it's very difficult to ground that in just science, right? To just say like, this type of story gives you these types of gains. Like that's very difficult to do. So we're going to have to we might have to do a survey of different cultures that lead to societies or populations or social groups that seem to be happy. And we have to point out like, hey, this isn't saying that these, following this is definitely going to make you happy, but like, maybe following this is going to make you happy. Are Mormons noted to be like very happy? Because in that case, we should do that. We should check it out. We should figure out. We should speculate. We should. What's the word? What would I say? We should. what's the word that means make clear what we're doing? We should explicitly speculate. We should explicitly speculate, but we should acknowledge our own speculation. We should speculate what's actually causing those outcomes for different people and different cultures. So maybe that's what we should do for each of these cultures. They're happy because they're gonna get their own planet soon, and everyone else is a dum-dum without the secret to life. Which planet are they getting? Earth? How are Mormons getting Earth? Is it because is Mormon teaching that there's going to be some like rapture where everyone else dies and the Mormons get to keep the planet? That's pretty messed up. They don't get Earth, they get to be a god of their own planet. What? That's part of their like post-death. Wow. Okay.
The inevitable subtleties, the inevitable confusion.
We should actually, that brings up a good point. We probably have to have a discussion, of what having a idea about your post-death can do to your life. And obviously, I wouldn't be able to do that without saying, hey, just so that we're all clear, everything that we've looked at so far in part 1 and part 2, but mainly part 1, tells us that, once it's all done, that's it. Our understanding of consciousness kind of shows us that. But that being said, if you were to just completely ignore that and you were to believe in this type of this thing, then perhaps that can contribute to your positive well-being. Maybe we do that type of thing. Don't try to disprove Mormonism. That will set us back 100,000 years. Oh, no. Yeah, part 3 is going to be interesting. Part 3 could be can go in all kinds of directions.
There's nothing in this technique that says that you should maintain an intention to drop intentions.
Right.
It says when you are aware of an intention to control your attention, drop that intention. You might think that the technique is saying, moment by moment, monitor whether you have an intention or not, okay? And always maintain the intention to drop those intentions. Well, then you'd be doing 2 things instead of doing nothing. Let whatever happens happen means whatever sensory experiences are going to happen, let them happen, including that you may be very scattered, maybe, that you may get sleepy and go unconscious, that you may get lost in monkey mind for long periods of time, that you will have very little concentration, clarity, or equanimity. Those are some of the things that could happen. They come under the phrase.
Why is it called monkey mind? Monkeys don't have complex thoughts.
So there's nothing in this technique that says those things won't happen, and they may be all.
Is it just because it's so unconscious and
However,
unintentional?
it also says as soon as you're aware of the intention to control your attention. So if you have an intention to do something about anything that has happened, drop that intention. Inevitable question, what happens if I can't drop it? Well, that goes to needing clarification about what drop means and what intention means. So the phraseology has been extremely carefully developed. Whenever you're aware of the intention to control your attention, drop that intention. We're going to define intention in a very specific way, and we're going to define drop in a very specific way. Intention is something that, by definition, you have complete control over. You can initiate it, or you can drop it. I have complete control over the movement of my arm. I can raise it, and I can decide not to raise it. Drop does not mean get rid of. It's in the moment. You drop the intention might come back immediately. That's fine. When it comes back, drop it again. If you can't drop it for even a second, then it's not fully free will. It's not full intention. So you don't have to drop it. Anything that you might think is an intention to control your attention, that when you drop it, you simply can't, then actually that's not free will, it's happening to you. And if you can't drop the intention, you don't have to drop it because the technique doesn't ask you to do that. And certainly the technique does not ask you to have a restful experience, although that could be a consequence of the technique, and with time tends to be a consequence of the technique. If the experience is horribly agitating and uncomfortable, there's absolutely no reason why you need to continue with this technique at that time. The catchphrase that I use is,
we got to hold on to this video. This is some good stuff. We got to get this in our Stan YouTube. What do I do here? Save to what? What am I saving this to? This needs to be a different type of playlist. I wanted to link something else. Okay, this has to be important for document. Let's just do that. And did I add it? Yes. Okay.
Makes you
Because if we try to explain do nothing, these types of minute points are really important.
racy.
Granted, we'll probably explain it in a slightly different way, but I think the comprehension here is, or the comprehensiveness is nice.
If do nothing makes you spacey.
That's an online version.
Notice the phrase,
You
as
had
soon as you're
this
aware of.
book in your notes.
You may very seldom be aware of the intention to control your attention. That's perfectly okay. I didn't say
Okay.
you'd be aware of it very often. Specifically, you are not being asked to moment
Mastering
by
the
moment
core
monitor
teachings of
for
the
the presence
Buddha.
of that intention.
Was
you
it
have to
from
wait
this
for the
book?
awareness to be there.
Whoops. I do want to listen to this. Was it this one? Nice. Awesome. Now, granted, I will probably prefer to still get the PDF and so that I could read it on my machine, but I do appreciate this. What was this? A very direct, hard-hitting, and sometimes controversial book that strips away cultural baggage and treats meditation as a practical, technical experiment you run on your own neurology. Sounds pretty fun. All right, what would be the order here? Perhaps the most comprehensive, rigorously structured manual mapping the traditional stages of samatha meditation onto modern cognitive science. That's what I was looking for. Isn't that what that was the looking into the phenomenal experiences. So that would be great. Then we could do this guy, and then altered traits, studies on what meditation actually does to the brain long term. We don't need this, honestly. I know this is terrible, but like Gemini can give us this, really. So I don't know. Maybe we just look into this one. Maybe we just get a summary of this one, since Gemini can give us all of these points. I mean, maybe it'll be like structured in a way that would be useful for us. But I would much prefer to get these guys down. I haven't read it though. It goes deep into concentration though. Ooh, okay. The Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. Very cool. Oh, TMI. What was TMI? The Mind Illuminated goes, okay. I'd imagine that, given that we're talking about the later jhanas.
Notice the phrase, as soon as you're aware of.
Okay, let's go back here.
And with time tends to be a consequence. Certainly, you can't drop the intention. You don't have to drop it because the technique doesn't ask you to do that. And certainly, the technique does not ask you to have a restful experience. Although that could be a consequence of the technique, and with time tends to be a consequence of the technique. If the experience is horribly agitating and uncomfortable, there's absolutely no reason why you need to continue with this technique at that time. The catchphrase that I use is, if noting makes you racy, try do nothing. If do nothing makes you spacey, try noting. Notice the phrase, as soon as you're aware of. You may very seldom be aware of the intention to control your attention. That's perfectly okay. I didn't say you'd be aware of it very often. Specifically, you are not being asked to moment by moment monitor for the presence of that intention. You have to wait for the awareness to be there, which might not be much of a wait, or it might be a long wait while you're lost in reverie and sleepiness. Perfectly okay as far as this technique goes. This is gome. Last night I gave a Tibetan word, dakme. I said me means
So
without
is this always
dak
during
itself.
retreat? The fact
Gom
that
is the Tibetan
Oh,
word
should I
for
just
meditate. Gome
hit
means
this with my knees.
don't meditate.
Yo,
Of
energy
course, you are
doctor.
meditating.
I was just saying it's just
The
concentration.
true gombe would be the state of 99.9% of human beings all the time, right? They
No
truly
idea. Yeah, like the fact that he would have a talk and then a talk the next night or the next day.
This is a form of meditation, but it's a sort of meditation. So as soon as you're aware of that intention, then drop it, whenever that may be, which may not be very often. There's no noting or labeling involved, obviously. Common question, well, what if I have the intention to move my body? Well, that's okay. I wouldn't always give into it. What you're pinpointing with this technique is most specifically whatever it is within us that decides to initiate thoughts, attempts to suppress thoughts, attempts to direct thoughts, decides to pursue a thought once it arises, or take it in some other direction once it arises, or use thought to do something
can we
about it
map
once
these?
it attempts to initiate thoughts,
Okay, initiate thoughts. DMN.
attempts to suppress thoughts.
Suppress thoughts. That would be the central executive, right? We should say that's kind of the central. That would be the central executive if you're doing a focused attention. It could be the salience network, as we said, in the sense that these types of thoughts aren't going to cause this cascade.
Attempts to direct thoughts, decides to
The direct thoughts would be the same. It would be that salience network.
pursue a thought once it arises, or
Same.
take it in some other direction once it arises, or use thought to do something about thought. That sort of place within us, whatever that place is what this technique will pinpoint with time. There are automatic responses of concentration, clarity, and equanimity within meditators. You don't have to have an intention for those to occur. They occur automatically. You don't drop that, because you'd actually have to have an intention to stop an automatic meditator's response, okay? So you
Okay, what's
absolutely...
going on here?
Responses of concentration, clarity, and equanimity within meditators. You don't have to have an intention for those to occur. They occur automatically. You don't drop that, because you'd actually have to have an intention to stop an automatic meditator's response, okay? So you absolutely do not interfere with the momentum of concentration, clarity, and equanimity that you've developed with the other techniques. In fact,
What would dropping that even mean, though? Like, it's not like you would dropping that would bring you back to the chaos. But you don't want to. I don't think he's saying that you want to harp on it. That you want to now concentrate on that feeling. He might be a resident teacher somewhere. Oh, okay.
that's sort of the whole idea. If there's any meditation that occurs, it's because of, in this technique, it's because of all the meditation you've done before. Is meditating you. You're not meditating. So two things are meditating you. The momentum of your previous practice and whatever you want to call it. The nature of nature, spirit, time, God, God's grace. Choose your words. I repeat, you're not meditating. But two things are meditating you. The momentum of what you've done previously and whatever you want to call this other thing. Someday we won't have to use this technique. We'll have a complete circuitry diagram of the human central nervous system. That will be extremely complex, to put it mildly. But we'll probably be able to point to that circuit and probably be able to, from the outside, turn it off for a little while.
What?
Perhaps inducing at will experiences of freedom from limited identity.
Wait. What's going on here now? We're going to
We're
have...
not meditating. But two things are, someday we won't have to use this technique. We'll have a complete circuitry diagram of the human central nervous system. That will be extremely complex.
He buried the lead there? Oh, what is that? I'm sorry, what is that, phrase mean in this context? Okay, so we could have we could have the full diagram, right? We could fully understand the system, but we can't. That doesn't obviously make us that doesn't allow us to actually stimulate this thing. But then also, like, while you could stimulate parts of the brain in theory if you had like electrodes or whatever you need. These transcranial. Now what's the word? Like there's perturbations, but is it transcranial magnetic stimulation? While you could do that, like I don't think we're gonna have consumer transcranial stimulation for at least 50 years, you know? I could be wrong there. That could actually happen in 10 or 20 depending on how our tech goes. But I don't think that only does something in the moment. What we want, actually no, that wouldn't do just something in the moment. If it creates brain activity, then it affects your trajectory. So honestly, if you could like somehow go to a meditation clinic and they just start stimulating your brain, you will develop the same types of skills that meditators do after a while. Now, granted, it might be I don't know, not as holistic of skills as meditators get, because maybe meditators are doing a lot of things at one time, and by just stimulating one part of the brain, you're doing like a very specific type of training. But doesn't matter. Like, he put the interesting part at the end. This dude got stimulated by ultrasound and he got crazy equanimity. Shinzen. Okay, so he knows what's possible, and you know, that's some Black Mirror stuff. I would expect that to be the case, that to be possible. It's just, when is that going to be actually available for consumers or whatever? Okay, very cool. All right, how do we want to? Okay, this is something we talked about yesterday. Okay, so we integrate a lot of stuff. Push back the retreat schedule is too fragmented. Right, obviously, your current retreat schedule shifts activities every 20 to 30 minutes from a cognitive science perspective. This is a recipe for agitation, not deep absorption. The brain requires approximately 15 to 20 minutes to fully overcome the switching cost of changing tasks and for the default mode network to quiet down. If you switch from walking to a thinking window to sitting to chores in rapid succession, you are essentially forcing your executive function to constantly reboot. You will spend the entire day in the shallow end of the cognitive pool. Correction, collapse? Oh no. Collapse these micro sessions into macro blocks. A standard intensive retreat block is usually 45 to 60 minutes of sitting. Get out of here. It wants me to... I know it's good advice, but I can't do it. That's too much. Now, maybe I just do a 1 day of 60 minutes, but even that doesn't sound as fun as what I had set up. But noting fear. What is fear? And you go through it. Oh, I see. Just noting. Right, the fear of the sitting. Right, that's the thing I would be noting. Yeah, but I don't, even though I can do it, and even though that would be a good practice, and even though I know that it would have positive outcomes, it would be too distressing for me, even post hoc, like, retrospectively, I would think, like, that really wasn't fun, and I wouldn't want to do that again. I want to do something that I would be, I am afraid. I'm afraid of, the outcomes here. Like, I'm afraid of the fact that I will not have a fun time and that I won't want to do it again. It's not even just a during the moment, right? It's not just the fear during the moment. It's not pragmatic. Like, I want to get to the end of this thing, like day after the retreat. I want to feel like, you know what? I should do that twice a year. I really enjoyed that. I want to incorporate that for the rest of my life. I don't want to do this thing and be like, that sucked so much that now I don't want to set up another one. Because even if, I guess I could try to force myself to, but there's going to be a part of my brain that knows how bad that feeling was, and it's going to want to not allow me to schedule that again. What if you like it? well, that's always a possibility that I could end up on the other side of this thing liking it. But I would probably know that I got through a lot of suffering until I got to the point where I liked it. But yeah, okay. Recommendation: group your activities. Okay, let's chill on that. But maybe we could be more strategic about putting similar types of activities next to each other, such that I'm like in the same location or doing a similar vibe. Like it would be something like a stretching going into a just sitting or something like that. May I ask it? Well, what was the question? I have a question related to ontology. Okay, we don't have too much time. I think I'm going to hop off. But here's the real suggestion. But you can certainly ask it, Energy Dompter. To my understanding, please correct me if I'm mistaken, your view is that relations are more fundamental ontologically than standalone entities. Is that correct? No. The thing that is ontologically fundamental would be the experience, the conscious experience of both of those, right? Now, what we're doing with entities or relations is we're just conceptualizing what we experience. So they're both just conceptualizations of what we're actually experiencing. Once again, I don't try to purport anything to be really like ontologically fundamental or true. So, I'm pointing out that, all this meaning that we're dealing with is coming to us in consciousness. And then, you could say that the idea that the idea of consciousness is most fundamental. I try to point out that even that type of concept is a concept that is very much affected by our culture. Like, I learned what consciousness is. I have so many expectations about what consciousness does or has or what shows up in consciousness. There's so much stuff that I've learned and integrated that's affecting how I think about consciousness, even when I meditate. So yeah, I would definitely not say that there's a thing that's fundamental in like a Platonic way. Okay, maybe one of the 20-minute sits you will feel, wow, I am in a cool state. I bet it would be fun to make it last another 5. You could stretch it naturally like that. Yeah, if I do get in that state, then I think I would indulge that. I think one of the things that I would want to come away with is like, day after I say, I felt that feeling of, I wish I had another 5 minutes in the sitting. The next time I do this, and maybe it's 3 months later, maybe I have so much fun, it's like, okay, every 3 months we're going to do this. Then I set it up so that I have a longer sit. So, I think it might be good if I have that experience, even if I don't indulge it. And I don't go another 5 minutes. Like, it would be like, oh, now I'm excited for the next time. Now I'm going to be able to get somewhere I didn't get. Like, we don't have to become enlightened during this day, in the Buddhist interpretation. Okay, I thought your perspective is that relations are more fundamental because concepts are constituted by their relations to other concepts. The way I would so we have to be very careful about the language here. Just as a fundamental rule when considering, I guess, the views that I usually talk about here, if we're talking about something being most fundamental or something is true in a fundamental way, chances are you might have gotten my explanation wrong in some sense. But the way I would say it is, my perspective is that I think that conceptualizing the contents of our experience as relations is more apt to what's actually both phenomenological, so like actually how we do experience the world. And I get that from like Heidegger, and I get that from Hegel, and I get that from a bunch of people. And I also think that it's more akin to like what we know about, I guess, neural activity. Though I don't even know if I could say that. It makes sense how things would be related in the sense that our activity is like using a lot of the Can I mute this? Oh, it's already passed. Sorry about that. You know what? I take that back. I don't think we can derive anything from neuroscience in terms of like whether we're. I think this is a completely phenomenological discussion, but it's all like, you know, it's all philosophical. It's all just conceptualizing. It's making sense of the things that we experience. There's. Yeah, there's nothing like actually true about it in a sense. I'm really making a case. I'm arguing that this way of conceptualizing the contents of our experience is like more effective than other conceptualizations. More effective in the sense of, let's go to part 1 real quick. Let's go to how we can evaluate our framework. So I think it's like more coherent in the sense that, okay, differentiates aspects of reality into a unified, logically consistent whole. Maybe this one suffers unless. Really, I just need to be clear about what I'm doing when I do it. Which in the document I kind of do that, and I need to do a better job of saying like, hey, we are just conceptualizing what's going on right now, which is why we have the whole section called conceptualizing our understanding. Explanatory power, and then practical utility. So yeah, I guess coherence and explanatory power maybe is where I'm making the argument. I'm saying like this type of conceptualization captures more of our observations, our intuitive observations, than like a completely Platonic view or a view that, you know, there's just objects. So it's really a philosophical kind of conclusion or conceptualization that we're dealing with, but it isn't one that's like making an assertion about what's actually there, what's actually true. It's not that our brain isn't made up of relations. Like that's not what's in our brain. We're really just describing qualia at this point. We're describing what is appearing in our own subjective experience. Okay, can I ask what makes a long meditation unbearable? Wait, are you asking me to ask Gemini, like what is actually physically happening such that it makes it unbearable, or are you asking me what I think for myself a long meditation would be unbearable? And I would probably try to give the same answer. So, what makes a long meditation unbearable? It would be the fact that my brain is not ready for it, really. Like that, when I try to do that, okay, in my experience, yeah, I mean, I guess I understand the usual way of thinking about this, that really what's, yeah, it would be a bunch of chaotic, like restlessness and experiences of pain that no matter how much I want to just experience that as, you know, what it is, just thoughts, my mind yelling at me, like, despite that, it's still that strong. Like, it's still, your posture is painful. No, it's not always the posture being painful. I think the posture's fine so far for the 20 minutes. It's usually just the, yeah, it's usually a restlessness, I think. It's usually I mean, there's some aspects of the posture. It's like I'm a tall person, so my back, even with a good posture, it's usually like my lower back that has like a little bit of pain. But that's fine. And my, you know what, my quads are feeling a little pain, but I've actually been surprised that it's not been actually that, it's never been too painful on my quads. But it's usually just the restlessness of, yeah, just my mind freaking out for, you know, perhaps no apparent reason. But it's just the mind isn't prepared for that level of, you know, I know it to be a lack of dopamine, but obviously in the moment it just feels like your mind is kind of taking on its own beast. So yeah, that's why I try to be That's why I tried to do this incrementally. I tried to do this add 5 seconds a day thing so that this is, so I get the least amount of friction while also increasing the time. And I found that that's actually been quite helpful. Is that a relatively more precise formula? Oh, what was that? Okay, I see. So you believe we can conceptualize our experience as relational. However, that doesn't mean that conceptualization is necessarily true. Oh, that conceptualization is necessarily true of the external world. Right. And once again, what you just said there kind of implies an external world. And I'm saying, hey, when we're talking about the external world, we're either talking about the physical world, or we're talking about things that we're conceptualizing that I guess, we could just say external world is anything empirical. That I would rather say the empirical world than the external world, because that ties back what we're really trying to get at when we're talking about concepts. So like there is the physical world out there, but really what we're dealing with is the empirical world. We're looking at things that we can actually notice and see. And when we're talking about even science for the sake of getting someone to the moon or something like that, like we're dealing with what is empirical in this process and not all the matter that's like floating in space or light photons. Like we're not caring about that. We're talking about the moon, which is something that we can obviously see. It's very like clear to us. So things that are empirical and salient are really are the objects of our conceptualizations. Okay. This is key kind of thinking. Is that a relatively more precise for? Okay. Something happened in the past. Exactly what was the experienced? Or are you saying like, okay, like feeling out, oh, what that was restlessness. I was averse to this. There was a flickering of anxiety about this. Right. I do try to notice that in the moment. That's the type of thing that I would like note. And often I try to not even like give it too much sway. Like even noting it might make it more real in a sense. So I just kind of notice it, right? And that's where I'm at. And, perhaps I can build the skills in order to just, meditate forever. But I'll say this about pain. And then we probably have to close out here. Bracketed questions. Do all methods of meditation quiet the DMN? No, they do not. Oh, when did I say this? Do all methods... Okay, that's not what I asked. Oh, this is the standardized document. Do all methods of meditation quiet the DMN? No, they do not. Not all methods quiet the DMN. Focused attention does, by forcing the central executive to dominate. Open monitoring does not necessarily quiet the DMN. Instead, it alters its functional connectivity. Thoughts and memories are allowed to arise, but they are decoupled from the emotional reactivity centers. Okay, so maybe open monitoring is all about the salience network. Non-dual often shows a unique signature where the DMN and TPN, which are normally mutually exclusive, so this task positive, so this is the central executive, which are normally mutually exclusive, co-activate. Okay, I see. So what's the difference between non-dual here and open monitoring? Because certainly this isn't talking about do nothing meditation, in which we wouldn't see any TPN activation. The resource project. Consider if other studies have more effectively done similar types of research. Keep the resource project led by Singer. It remains the gold standard in contemplative neuroscience, specifically because it isolated the distinct neurological effects of presence, affect, and perspective. Most other studies lump mindfulness together. The resource project rigorously separated the variables. Okay. All right, and then we could fill the empty headers tomorrow. Okay. But I'll say this about pain. Thank you very much, Energy Dumpster, for the question. I do always like talking through that type of thing. And I always think about like what we're allowed to say, like how we're allowed to actually, like what words are we allowed to use to describe what we're trying to say. And when I say that, I mean like based on the norms of what we know from the science, or based on the norms of what we know about these phrases, or just the linguistics in general. So, okay, with Vipassana, it can help or hinder, but if you're doing concentration stuff, then it really just gets in the way and there's not much point. But if you're doing concentration stuff, then it really just gets in the way. Okay, so in those moments, yeah, I guess in focused meditation, where I've got like focused attention, I'm paying attention on the breath, I give less, I don't know, observation. I mean, I'm trying to do something this whole time. So maybe I notice the pain, but I'm really trying to, I get rid of the pain in this case by not necessarily like, noting the pain or anything, but by keeping the focus. And I think that works pretty well as well. I think by forcing one aspect of consciousness, you basically hinder the other ones, or you inhibit the other ones. Oh, and then of course you could focus on the pain, and that's very powerful for concentration. But if you're trying to get jhanas, then you just want pleasure. Pain will get in the way. Okay. Yeah, I mean, chances are I won't have a practice of just trying to get the jhanas. Unless, of course, that's effective for whatever reason we discussed. Probably something having to do with like metta or something, where I'm actually trying to like build a positive well-being state rather than just like building attentional skills. Very effective to do that first. Okay, to train in concentration, then Vipassana is traditional. Right. I would just want to know, like, what is distinctively productive about the jhanas over some of these other meditation methods. Like, I'm probably, I know this is terrible, but I'm probably going to try to figure out what methods of meditation lead to what outcomes, and then I'm going to try to figure out, okay, what are the most practical ways we could go about each of these, and then that's what we would want to talk about in the document. And like getting to like late jhanas would probably not, I'm guessing it's not going to be something where we would want to explain that in the document as like, this is a thing that can get you to this type of outcome, but maybe, we'll see. Jhanas are just the map of good concentration practice. Okay. Right, but is it necessary to include that? If we're trying to teach someone how they can leverage concentration, can we just get away with, here are the basic concentration practices you could do, rather than concentrating on these areas in the map? Because once again, like having the jhanas there is giving you something to look for, to expect. Okay, you can even do Vipassana on the feelings of the jhanas. Yeah, it's advanced for most, I think. So yeah, we'll just have to see. Too advanced. All right. Well, I think we're doing a good job this month so far. Yeah, at any point, if you feel like there's something that we are missing in our trajectory, obviously we have a lot more to cover, but definitely let me know. That goes to anyone watching. Yeah. Sounds good. You just learn. Yep, will do. I'll keep at it. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for chilling. Thanks for booling. Thanks for the positive vibes. Yeah, have a good rest of the day.